Yesterday, the entire liberal media industrial complex ecosystem aired reruns and recycled old articles from 2016. The same ones that they recycle just about every week, the entire year. And in 2017, and 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, last year, and this whole year as well. This is hot off the press from the Washington Post yesterday. How Trump's rhetoric compares with everyone's favorite boogeyman. Here's MSNBC from yesterday, sounding like the same broken record they've been every day for the last 7 years.
Let's deal with Hitler, okay?
Okay.
Tell me how Trump sees Hitler.
Well,
and you could see it in countries where, Hitler was duly elected.
That's right.
Right? And so all of a sudden, somebody with those tendencies, those dictatorial, authoritarian tendencies would be like, oh, okay, we're going to shut this down. We're going to throw these people in jail.
And that's exactly what the Democrats are doing. But in true leftist fashion, they are, of course, accusing the other side of doing that which they themselves are guilty of.
And yet, the hand-wringing and cocktail party speculation about an alternative to Joe Biden is continuing, will continue. Guess what? Joe Biden isn't perfect. No candidate is, by the way. But we have to understand what the alternative is here. If elected to a second term, Donald Trump would prosecute anyone he deems an enemy, unleash troops on protesters, and essentially unravel the rule of law as we know it. And this time, he plans to line his administration with people who will actually help him do it. But sure, Joe Biden is 3 years older and occasionally trips over things. Look, there's a lot to be concerned about right now when it comes to a second Trump term. The speeches are getting much more disturbing and much more unhinged, and we should all hear it that way.
Actually, what's disturbing is one of the first things the Biden administration did when they were in power was indict and then throw in prison for 7 months. Somebody posted a meme on Twitter 5 years earlier, joking that Democrats were so dumb that they could text in their vote instead of actually getting in line and spending their time. And the entire liberal media industrial complex celebrated his sentencing and spun the meme as if it was some sort of a voter suppression scheme. And let's not forget they sentenced Joe Biggs to 17 years in prison for the crime of being a Proud Boy and peacefully walking around inside the Capitol on January 6th. And remember the guy who was photographed putting his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk? Well, he was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Owen Schroyer, a host over at InfoWars, is in prison for 2 months because he stepped on the stairs outside of the Capitol. Didn't even go inside, but he stepped onto one of the steps. And on one hand, that's obviously an absurd sentence. On the other, it's surprisingly a light sentence, considering the communists that we're up against. I'm surprised that they actually didn't give him a year. And did you see Letitia James in court? I think this was yesterday. She's the George Soros district attorney who's trying to steal the businesses away from the Trump family. Literally trying to just cancel their business permits and then fine them $250 million. So Don Jr. was in court. He has to testify. And so here she is. Just get a load of her. There she is sitting in the background. She's the one who filed the charges. And so she's there to watch the circus, smirking at her handiwork. And all this is happening because Donald Trump decided to run for re-election. And so they're pulling out all the stops to try to stop him, especially since he is the presumptive nominee, the frontrunner by far. This new from the New York Times. As black voters drift to Trump, Biden's allies say they have work to do. The New York Times Siena polling painted a worrisome picture for old Joe standing with a crucial constituency. Democratic strategists warned that the erosion of the black votes could threaten old Joe's re-election. Even the New York Times is admitting that Donald Trump is set to beat old Joe. And some of the DeSantis people say that they're only doing this to try to prop him up because they really know that he's going to lose and they want old Joe to face off against Donald Trump again. But as you can see, the country has completely collapsed under old Joe. Many people now are looking back at the good old days and wishing that he was still in office. The other big story yesterday was this footage of Jenna Ellis giving testimony, who threw Donald Trump under the bus in order to avoid going to prison herself for doubting the outcome of the 2020 presidential election, which you know you're not allowed to do in communist countries. what the government says, what the media says is the truth, no matter what. So she narrowly avoided going to prison by joining the dark side. And now she is giving them stories, not just hearsay, which isn't admittable in criminal cases, which is something that somebody claims that they heard somebody say, which is not allowed because then you can't cross-examine that supposed source. So she is telling them that she heard somebody say something that they said they heard from Donald Trump. So it's a game of telephone now. And this was the second biggest story yesterday in all the liberal media. The evidence now is in. Donald Trump planned to just stay in the White House no matter what.
I emphasized to him, I thought that the claims and the ability to challenge the election results was essentially over. He said to me in a kind of excited tone, well, we don't care and we're not going to leave. And
she's talking about what Dan Scavino allegedly told her.
I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, the boss, meaning President Trump, and everyone understood the boss. That's what we all called him. He said the boss is not going to leave under any circumstances. We are just going to stay in power. And I said to him, well, it doesn't quite work that way, you realize. And he said, we don't care.
He said, we don't care. That's newly obtained video obtained by the Washington Post. It's former Trump lawyer Jenna Ellis speaking to Fulton County prosecutors. Now,
notice the difference in her demeanor and her tone now that she has sided with the Democrats and agreed to be re-educated in order to avoid going to prison. This was her now, and this was her then.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings.
You get the point. She literally broke down into tears, but now has a renewed sense of confidence that she has been granted immunity from her wrongthink. And I guarantee you that she's working on a book right now. And her new book, which will be a tell-all book from inside the Trump administration from his former attorney, who's now seen the light, will be released in October of 2024, just before the election. And the Operation Mockingbird assets will pump it up to the #1 best-selling spot on the New York Times bestseller list, which of course is a fake list by a fake newspaper, just like they did Cassidy Hutchinson's. But this time it's not going to be just some no-name, low-level staffer like it was with this 50-year-old looking woman who I believe is only 25. It's going to be his former right-hand woman and attorney, Jenna Ellis, tells all. Someone else who's not a sellout has a brand new book that just came out last week. You may have heard. Mine, of course, The War on Conservatives. So order it in paperback from Amazon.com if you haven't, or download the ebook from any of the major ebook stores. And of course, there's a link to the Amazon listing in the description below. So click it, head on over there, and check it out.